Welcome to her Fireside Stories, the place where real life drama unfolds right before your ears. Today's story will grip your heart from the very first moment. Imagine your daughter in law telling you bluntly to stay in your lane regarding her wedding planning. But what she never anticipated was that her mother in law would respond by reclaiming the entire wedding fund, flipping everything upside down. To find out exactly how this bold decision changed everyone's lives, and whether it led to redemption or regret. You'll need to listen closely till the very end. Before we dive in, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to catch all our captivating tales. Don't forget to leave a comment sharing your personal thoughts and let me know from where you're tuning in. Now settle in and prepare yourself for this unforgettable story. I still feel the burn in my chest when I remember how she said it. Stay in your lane. I was standing in my own kitchen, mind you pouring her a cup of green tea and smiling the way I thought a gracious mother-in-law should. But from the moment that command spilled out of Zara's perfectly glossed lips, I felt like an intruder in my own family's happiness. It wasn't just the words. It was the razor-sharp tone, the flippant wave of her manicured hand, and the dismissive glance she gave me before scrolling through her phone again. That day, everything changed for me. I'm not talking about small shifts in attitude or casual disagreements. I mean an emotional earthquake that split the ground beneath my feet and forced me to stare into the chasm of what my son's upcoming wedding had become a spectacle where I wasn't even welcome to participate. Let me introduce myself properly. I'm Celeste Hastings. I'm in my early 60s and I've worn my wavy silver hair in a layered bob for years, a style I once proudly adopted after retiring from professional wedding planning. My hair might have silver strands woven in, but it's stylish enough to reflect who I am. A woman who's lived, loved, and isn't ready to fade into the background. When my son Elliot told me he was proposing to Zara, I felt the kind of exhilaration you only read about in sentimental novels. My late husband Hugh and I had saved money for this moment, 20 years worth of budgeting, sacrificing and dreaming of the day our only child would walk down the aisle beaming with love. But now it felt as though I'd been barred from even stepping onto the stage. Back then, I didn't realize the full extent of Zara's need for control. She had a boldness to her, a certain brand of modern confidence that lit up social media feeds. She wore her straight black hair in a flawlessly sleek style that never seemed to have a single strand out of place. Like a magazine cover, she projected an image of an up-to-date trend-setting bride. In theory, I admired that. In practice, I found out the hard way that her vision left no room for anyone else's expertise, not even mine. Still, I tried to pretend we were on the same team. Until that day in my kitchen when she told me to stay in my lane, effectively shutting me out of a wedding I'd once thought I'd help plan. Let's rewind a bit long before the insult and the tension. The day Elliot announced his engagement to Zara was like a sunrise after a long, dark night. I still remember him bounding through the front door, carrying a tiny velvet box and wearing a grin that could light up the whole city. Elliot has always been a steady soul with neatly combed brown hair parted to the side, reflecting his practical nature. He was never flashy, never one to make impulsive decisions. But this time, the ring he'd chosen was so brilliant it momentarily blinded me, and I couldn't help but think he'd finally found a piece of magic in his life. I wanted to cry from happiness, if I'm honest. After losing Hugh, my world shrank to a handful of friends, my still cozy suburban home, and the cherished memories of a marriage that ended too soon. Seeing Elliot so eager to start a family of his own felt like a second chance, a new chapter that might bring warmth back into my house. Naturally, I offered to help. After all I'd spent 35 years in wedding planning before retiring, I had a directory of vendors that covered everything from rustic barn weddings to luxurious hotel galas. My name was well known in the Boston bridal circuit, and I was confident I could guide Elliot and Zara through the entire process. But early on, I sensed a coolness from Zara. She always wore a polite smile, teeth just barely showing whenever I brought up wedding details. "Thank you, Celeste," she'd say, "but I'm sure we'll figure it out." Or, "That's so sweet, but my friend from LA is super current. She has all these Pinterest boards sorted out already." At first, I took no offense. I told myself that modern brides have modern expectations, that maybe my experience felt outdated in the Instagram era. Still, it hurt to see my lifetime of knowledge brushed aside like an old tablecloth. No one wanted. I tried to keep my hopes high, telling myself I'd get a chance to shine, eventually maybe choose the floral arrangements or help with the seating chart. Anything but Zara's approach to me never changed. If anything, her attitude grew colder, and her mother Camilla was even more aloof than she was. Camilla possessed the sort of presence that demanded attention the second she swept into a room. Her shoulder-length chestnut hair was always blow-dried to perfection, with subtle caramel highlights that caught the light whenever she tossed it back. She carried herself like a magazine editor, always dressed in tailored outfits that screamed both status and severe elegance. Where Zara was modern and minimalistic, Camilla oozed old world sophistication mixed with an undercurrent of "I know best." In truth, part of me was intimidated by her, even though I'd been in the wedding industry far longer than she'd ever set foot on a red carpet. When the first official wedding discussion happened at Camilla's glass and marble-filled home, I was invited, albeit reluctantly. The space was coldly beautiful, like a staged house on a luxury real estate website. No pictures, no personal touches, just polished floors and sleek furniture. Zara lounged on a designer couch, scrolling through her phone. Elliot sat beside her, his foot tapping anxiously on the floor. Camilla offered me sparkling water and an empty smile. That was the extent of her warmth. The conversation turned to color palettes. Zara rattled off a list of neutrals: off-white, gray, black, maybe a metallic accent for drama. She was enthralled with some online wedding planner who specialized in high-fashion ceremonies. I cleared my throat gently, offering a small portfolio of my own. I picked out some color boards that echoed timeless elegance, soft ivory touches of gold, maybe subtle greenery to give it life. Before I could fully explain, Zara cut in with a sniff. "Oh, that's so traditional." She drew out the last word like it was stale coffee left too long in the pot. Then Camilla nodded in condescending agreement. I felt my face flush, but I forced a smile. "Yes, it's a classic choice, but I can adapt if you want something else." My voice wavered only slightly. Zara's gaze flicked back to her phone. "We're leaning towards something more current," she murmured, half distracted by an Instagram reel. "Anyway, we've already got some ideas with the planner. I follow online. She's incredible. Her name is Freya Ray. She specializes in unique modern weddings." I had never heard of Freya Ray, but that wasn't surprising. New wedding influencers pop up every day, often more concerned with clout than the actual craft. I should have predicted what came next. Zara made it clear that Freya Ray would be the sole visionary of the event, and Camilla nodded as if it were the most logical decision in the world. Elliot tried to meet my eye, looking caught between his fiancée's excitement and his loyalty to me. But in the end, he said nothing. The entire conversation felt like a polite way of telling me, "We don't need you. We can handle it." Maybe that was the polite version. Zara's harsh "stay in your lane" would follow soon after, effectively removing even the pretense of courtesy. The weeks that followed were torture. Every so often, I'd text Elliot to ask how the planning was going, suggest a trusted caterer, or a florist I'd worked with for years. Sometimes I didn't even get a reply. When he did respond, it was short and tense. "We have it handled. Mom or Zara's got a plan." I remember the day I decided to drop by their apartment with a box of Elliot's childhood photos. Maybe they'd want to use them for a cute display at the reception. Zara answered the door, her straight black hair pulled into a low, slick ponytail that accentuated her sharp features. She looked me up and down, then let out a sigh so soft I almost missed it. "We already have a slideshow from the engagement shoot," she said, barely looking at the photos, "but thanks." The entire time I kept thinking, she might not want me, but Elliot does surely. We'd always been close, especially after Hugh passed away. But each time I reached out, the gap between us widened. I didn't realize then how fully Zara had captured his world. He was mesmerized by her confidence and enthralled with her family's flamboyant lifestyle. My humility probably looked humble to the point of dullness in comparison, yet the ache grew. Worked so hard to save up for Elliot's wedding, I was prepared to pay for a significant portion of it. I never asked to run the show, just to be part of it, but apparently that was too much to ask. The worst moment, the one that finally pushed me past my breaking point, happened on a Saturday I'd set aside to show Zara some floral arrangement mock-ups I'd designed myself. I spent half the night combing through old sketches, updating them with a modern twist so she wouldn't dismiss them as old-fashioned. I even added photos from recent events. To demonstrate my range, I carried these precious samples in a neat folder, determined to present them without stepping on anyone's toes. Zara had invited me along with Camilla and two of her friends to a trendy lunch spot in the city. The place had faux grass walls, neon signs, and overpriced lattes in mason jars. Everything you'd expect from a place that thrives on Instagram tags. When I arrived, they were all already seated, flipping through their phones or sipping pastel-colored drinks. Zara gave me a half smile, her ponytail swinging as she turned her head. "You made it," she said, then went back to scanning the menu. I waited for the right moment to gently slide my folder onto the table. "I thought you might like to see some floral ideas," I said, softly, opening to a page of airy romantic arrangements. Plenty of greenery, soft pastel blooms, small touches of gold or copper for that contemporary edge. Her friend leaned over to peek and made a face. Zara glanced, then shrugged. "That's sweet, Celeste," she replied. "But Freya has this entire plan with neon palms, disco balls, and like a live succulent wall. We really want that futuristic vibe." A pang shot through my chest. Neon palms, disco balls. None of that felt like Elliot at all, but I swallowed my confusion and tried to keep my voice steady. "I just thought it might be nice to incorporate something personal," I said. "A reflection of your styles. Maybe something meaningful to your families." Camilla sipped her sparkling water and arched an eyebrow. "Zara wants something different," she stated, "something that stands out." Then one of Zara's friends giggled and added, "Yeah, it's a fresh approach. No offense, but those look a bit classical." I felt like a cactus needle had pricked my heart. "You offense?" The phrase is always followed by something inherently offensive. I sat there silent as they moved on to talking about wedding goals, discussing how important it was to go viral with the right hashtag. Did they really see the wedding day as nothing more than an opportunity for social media clout? I could practically feel myself aging decades. In that moment, the hum of their conversation, reminding me that I was a relic in their eyes. I closed my folder gently, trying to hide the shaking in my hands. I offered a smile, small, practiced, and painfully polite. "Well," I ventured after a long pause, "I'm excited to see what you all come up with. Let me know if I can help in any way." Zara gave a dismissive nod, turning back to her phone to message Freya Ray, or so I assumed. Her platinum manicure gleamed in the midday light, each finger moving with absolute confidence. Sitting there, I suddenly felt foolish for having come in the first place. It was clear I was an accessory they had no real use for. Even the short texts from Elliot afterward became more perfunctory, more distant. He'd say, "Mom, you worry too much," or "Zara's just strong-willed. She doesn't mean to hurt your feelings," but it never changed the fact that I was shut out. To them, my ideas, my presence, my entire decades of experience simply didn't fit their fresh and modern brand. By the time lunch ended, I walked out with my folder tucked against my chest, feeling more alone than I'd ever felt since Hugh's funeral. Only this time, the loss was intangible, the slow erasure of my place in my own son's wedding, it seemed, like no matter how hard I tried to squeeze in, they'd already shut the door on me. And that's when Zara delivered the blow, leaning over as we exited the cafe and whispering, "No offense, Celeste, but maybe you should stay in your lane. Let Freya handle it." That was the final straw. In the days after that final stay in your lane remark, I retreated. I told myself I was just giving them space, but really I was licking my wounds. Let me tell you, there's something heartbreaking about realizing you're not just unwanted, but actively dismissed. A wedding is supposed to bring families together, but ours was tearing us apart. Still, there was one thing I had not yet done. I had not made any official transfer of funds. Hugh and I had a special savings account marked clearly on the statement, Elliot's Wedding Fund. It was substantial enough to cover a significant portion of a decent-sized wedding I'd planned to hand that over as a gift, a blessing for his future. But every day that passed, I grew more certain that I should wait. Zara's controlling nature and scathing remarks planted seeds of doubt that only flourished in my mind. One evening, as the autumn breeze rattled the windows, I opened up the bank statements and stared at the total. I ran my fingertips over the faded note Hugh had once scribbled in the ledger. "Make his day special. Love, Dad." My heart clenched with longing. A part of me wanted to preserve my husband's wish to make Elliot's wedding day special, but the other part of me, the one that had been scorched by Zara's arrogance, felt it was madness to hand over that money and become even more irrelevant. I could see the writing on the wall if I gave them the entire fund. Now I'd have no leverage, no voice, nothing. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I withdrew nearly all of it. Not to punish Elliot, though. I'll admit some anger burned inside me. Rather, I did it to protect myself. I left a small sum enough that it wouldn't look like I'd broken the piggy bank completely, but the rest went into a private savings account solely in my name. Then I wrote a modest check for a token amount and mailed it to Elliot and Zara with a short, polite, "Wishing you both joy. Here's a little something to help love." Mom Elliot showed up at my doorstep 2 days later, looking frazzled and more than a little upset. He'd always kept his hair neatly trimmed, but this time it was slightly disheveled as though he'd been running his hands through it in frustration. "Mom, what's going on?" he demanded, waving the check I'd sent. "We thought you were paying for the wedding, like all of it." I took a steadying breath. I was originally. "But things change, Elliot. I'm not sure I'm comfortable handing over such a large sum when I'm essentially disinvited from most of the decisions." His eyes darkened, confusion mingling with a flicker of guilt. "Zara's just, you know how she gets. She has a specific vision and she's under a lot of pressure from social media, from her friends. She doesn't mean to exclude you." I pressed my lips together. She told me quite literally to stay in my lane. She's turned away every gay suggestion I've offered. I don't think it's just stress, Elliot. It's disrespect, and you've let it happen. He stared at the floor, one hand rubbing the back of his neck. I'd seen that posture before, usually when he was a teenager caught doing something wrong. "She didn't mean it like that," he mumbled. "We're sorry you feel hurt, but we've already started signing contracts. We're counting on your contribution." That's when I learned Zara had already hired Freya Ray, the celebrity wedding planner, who had gone viral for orchestrating flamboyant desert elopements and disco-themed receptions. The kicker, Freya required a massive retainer, $55,000 up front. My heart nearly stopped. The sheer recklessness of it all made me furious. I asked Elliot if he'd done any research on her. He only shrugged. "Zara says she's legit. Lots of followers. Big name." I felt my last shred of sympathy slip away. "Followers don't equal credibility," I warned. "You're gambling with your wedding day. Do you understand that?" But Elliot just looked at me, frustration etched on his face. "We already committed," he said. "We can't back out now, so much for wanting my help." For a while, I tried to move on, pushing the wedding out of my mind. I dove into my own life, revisiting hobbies I'd neglected. I joined a pottery class at the local community center, trying to shape lumps of clay into bowls, cups, anything presentable. My teacher, an upbeat woman named Regina, who sported a colorful pixie cut, complimented my efforts even when my creations were lopsided. I found solace in the imperfection of it all. It reminded me that not everything has to be pristine or perfect to be beautiful. Meanwhile, rumors trickled in through mutual friends and acquaintances. Zara was practically bragging about her high-budget, ultra-modern wedding, telling everyone that some big influencer was going to transform the entire day into a spectacle worthy of going viral. The more I heard, the more I recognized that none of it sounded like Elliot. When I'd raised him, he was never one for gaudy displays. He preferred genuine connections. Family dinners, heartfelt conversations, even spending time reading comic books with me on quiet nights. I couldn't reconcile that sweet, thoughtful boy with the man sinking thousands into a vanity project. Then, one Tuesday morning, my phone rang. It was Elliot, his voice shaky. "Mom? Freya just disappeared." I remember gripping the phone tightly, my mind swimming with confusion. Disappeared? What do you mean? He explained that her social media accounts had gone blank. No posts, no stories. The website was down. Calls went straight to voicemail. "She took our deposit." He continued, sounding stricken, "and now we can't reach her." My heart sank. It was exactly what I'd feared, but I felt no satisfaction. This wasn't a trivial inconvenience. It was a devastating loss of tens of thousands of dollars. Worse, it was an emotional betrayal. "I'm so sorry," I whispered, not sure what else to say. I wanted to hold my child, reassure him, but a part of me was also angry at him for ignoring my warnings, for letting Zara push me away, for funneling everything into a dream that was built on an unstable foundation. "Zara's blaming me," Elliot said finally, his voice cracking. "She said if we'd just gotten the full money from you in the first place, we wouldn't have had to resort to someone like Freya." That's when I realized the blame was headed straight at me. Zara, who had insisted I stay in my lane, was now furious that I hadn't bankrolled the entire fiasco, wanted the freedom to do things her way while still expecting me to foot the bill. It was so absurd, I almost laughed. But the pain in Elliot's voice stopped any amusement. He'd lost more than money. He'd lost his faith in the grand wedding he'd envisioned, and possibly he was losing Zara's support in the process. I told him to come over if he needed to talk, but he hesitated. I don't think Zara wants that," he said, sounding like a child afraid of scolding. My anger spiked. "Well, you're my son. I'm here if you want that." He mumbled an apology and hung up. I stood there, phone still in hand, an avalanche of emotions swirling through me. Disbelief, pity, outrage, heartbreak. They all converged in a single tear that slipped down my cheek. I felt so powerless even though I had the money, the knowledge, and the willingness to help under different circumstances. A week later, I heard from mutual acquaintances that the wedding was postponed indefinitely. Vendors canceled. Caterers demanded non-refundable deposits. Everything had spiraled out of control so quickly, it was like watching a building collapse in real time. Zara and Camilla tried to salvage some aspects, but eventually the entire engagement crumbled under the weight of financial ruin and frayed emotions. It turned out that without the grand illusions, Zara didn't have the same starry-eyed vision for a future with Elliot. She moved back in with Camilla, and just like that, the impending wedding vanished like a puff of smoke in the wind. I wish I could say I found some twisted joy in seeing their downfall. But the truth is, it hurt. Maybe Zara never appreciated me, but Elliot was my son and he was reeling. I heard from neighbors that he looked lost. Skipping work, staying at home with the lights off, I ached for him, wanting to reach out to comfort him. But I also remembered how he'd stood by Zara while she demeaned me. Sometimes love means letting people face their own consequences. Time carried on in its relentless way. The vibrant autumn leaves soon gave way to the chill of winter, and I spent my days quietly. I rekindled old friendships, joined a local book club, and helped at the library's used book sale little by little. I rediscovered myself outside the role of the wedding planner mom. I let my hair grow a bit longer in the back, adding gentle layers that gave it more volume, a subtle transformation that felt symbolically freeing. Whenever I missed Elliot, I'd scroll through my phone, see the photos from years ago, birthday parties, family trips, the day he got his first car. I'd wonder where that open-hearted, curious boy had gone, but I never let myself dwell too long. He'll come around, I told myself, or maybe he won't. Either way, you can't force it. Weeks turned into months. I heard through the grapevine that Zara had moved on, apparently floating around high society parties with Camilla clinging to illusions of grandeur. Elliot's name rarely surfaced in those circles. Rumors suggested the breakup had been final, with Zara calling it a huge disappointment. For me, it was more complicated than that. I felt no real victory in her departure. She was simply gone, and in her wake, she'd left Elliot feeling small, betrayed, and confused. Then one frosty morning, my phone buzzed with a text. "Mom, can I come over? I need to talk." The words I'd been waiting to see for so long were finally on my screen. My heart raced, and I quickly replied, "Of course, anytime." An hour later, Elliot arrived at my doorstep. He looked tired, dark circles under his eyes. The lines of worry etched into his forehead, but he managed a small, genuine smile. He brought along a grocery bag of odds and ends, which turned out to be some old photo albums he found while packing up the remnants of the life he'd shared with Zara. We settled into the living room, the afternoon light slanting through the curtains, and he just talked. No blame, no excuses, just raw honesty about how he'd felt controlled, how he realized too late that Zara's quest for the perfect wedding overshadowed any real commitment to a marriage. Elliot cried that day. It wasn't a loud, dramatic scene, just quiet tears sliding down his cheeks as he flipped through the photos of happier times. He spoke about how he'd let Zara's confidence overshadow my experience, how he felt torn between wanting to stand by her and knowing I deserved better. He apologized for not recognizing how she'd treated me, for letting her words go unchallenged. "I should have stood up for you," he whispered. "I was so caught up in keeping the peace that I didn't realize I was losing you." My own tears weren't far behind. I cupped his face, wiping at the wetness there with my thumb. "I understand," I told him gently. "Sometimes we want so badly to hold on to love that we ignore all the warning signs. I've been there, but it's not your fault she turned out that way." He nodded, a heaviness lifting from his expression. "Should have listened to you about the planner. I remember you telling me all those horror stories you'd witnessed when couples rushed into deals, but I was too busy trying to prove I could do it myself, to show everyone I didn't need help." I sighed. "I just wish you'd have included me, not because I wanted control, but because I wanted you to have the best of what I could offer. I was never trying to overshadow Zara. I just wanted to be there for you, for both of you." We sat like that for a while, letting the silence heal us. Sometimes no words can fill the gap, only acceptance and a promise to do better next time. We made dinner together that evening, a simple soup and grilled cheese, the kind of comfort food we used to share when Elliot was little. And for the first time in months, my home felt alive again. In that moment, I realized something important. I had been waiting for Elliot's remorse and recognition, but I no longer needed them to validate my decisions. I had taken back the wedding fund and my self-respect because I deserved better. His apology was the icing on the cake, a chance for us to rebuild, loving the story so far. Don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into family trials, heartwarming resolutions, and the lessons we learn along the way. Life resumed a steadier rhythm after that reconciliation. Elliot, free from the looming pressure of a toxic engagement, found himself again. He reconnected with old friends, picked up new hobbies, and even started jogging in the mornings, a habit he once loathed. I watched with maternal pride as he began to smile more often. We met for Sunday brunches at my house, and occasionally he'd bring a friend or two along. It wasn't the glamorous scene Zara used to conjure, but it was real. It was authentic, and it felt like home. Not long after I heard he'd met someone new. Her name was Marina, and she was worlds apart from Zara. Marina worked as a kindergarten teacher, cherished local arts, and wore her warm brown hair in loose curls that bounced around her shoulders. According to Elliot, she rarely wore makeup, just a swipe of lip balm, and she found more joy in a heartfelt conversation than in racking up social media likes. I tried not to let my excitement show too obviously when he first mentioned her, but inside I was thrilled. Could this be the woman who really sees him for who he is? Eventually, Elliot brought Marina by the house for dinner. I'll admit I was nervous after everything with Zara. I felt a small fear of history repeating itself, but from the moment Marina stepped over my threshold, I sensed a gentle sincerity about her. She handed me a small potted basil plant, saying she heard I liked to cook. I thought maybe we could plant this in your kitchen garden, she said, and I grinned at the thoughtful gift. Her hair was loosely pinned back, a few curls escaping to frame her face. She had a habit of tucking those curls behind her ear whenever she spoke animatedly about something she loved, her students, a book she was reading, or even a local poetry slam she'd attended. She listened to me too ask questions about my life, my background, and even my time as a wedding planner. Not once did she roll her eyes at my experiences. In fact, she seemed fascinated, leaning forward with genuine curiosity as I described some of the more memorable weddings I'd organized. After dinner, while Elliot washed dishes in the kitchen, Marina and I carried cups of tea into the living room. She settled into the armchair, crossing her legs delicately, her curls swaying as she tilted her head to the side. Elliot's told me a little about what happened with his previous engagement. She began softly, "I'm really sorry you went through that. I hope you don't think all of us younger folks are the same." I let out a soft laugh, shaking my head. "Not at all. I just happened to cross paths with a bride-to-be who believed her mother-in-law was an inconvenience. It hurt, but it taught me a lot about setting boundaries." Marina nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Elliot said you used to be one of the go-to wedding planners in Boston. Would you ever consider helping us? I mean, if we ever get to that point. It's not that I'm proposing or anything," she added quickly, blushing under the soft glow of the lamp. "I just really value your experience. Weddings aren't something I know much about." Her openness took me by surprise. I realized how rarely I'd met someone who actually respected and even admired my background. "I'd be honored," I replied gently, "but only if it's what you want. I don't want to force my ideas on anyone." Marina reached over and squeezed my hand. "Celeste, you'd never be forcing anything. I appreciate how you see a wedding not just as a big party, but as a moment for family and friends to come together in a meaningful way." She laughed then, a light, airy sound. "Besides, I can barely organize my weekly lesson plans, let alone a major event. I'll need all the help I can get." Elliot walked in at that moment, drying his hands on a dish towel. He looked at Marina, then at me, and smiled. Really smiled, the kind that brightens a person's whole face. In that instant, I saw hope for him, for me, for all of us. That night, as they left, my heart felt lighter than it had in a long time. Months rolled by, and I watched Elliot and Marina's relationship deepen. She brought out a side of him that had gone dormant. He laughed, more teased more, and even experimented with cooking recipes. He found online something he never would have done when he was with Zara. In turn, Elliot supported Marina's dream to start an after-school literacy program for underprivileged kids. They were building a real partnership, one based on compassion and mutual growth, not on aesthetics and social media hype. Eventually, Elliot confided in me that he was ready to propose again. At first, he worried about how I'd react given the fallout from his previous engagement, but I reassured him that if he was certain of his feelings for Marina, he should follow his heart. Just promise me you'll do it on your own terms, I advised. Don't let anyone dictate how or when, and that's exactly what he did. Over a quiet weekend at a lakeside cabin, he knelt down on the wooden dock curls of mist rising from the water and offered her a simple, elegant ring. She said yes with tears of joy in her eyes. When they returned home newly engaged and full of excitement, the first person they came to see was me. I opened my front door to find Elliot standing there, ring box in one hand, Marina's hand in the other. They both looked breathless as though they'd run straight here after the cabin. Marina showed me the ring, a small sapphire surrounded by delicate diamonds. Elliot said, "Sapphires stand for sincerity and faithfulness." She beamed. "That's exactly what I want our marriage to be about." I ushered them inside, and Elliot didn't hesitate to ask Mom, "Can you help us plan? We want a wedding that's real, a reflection of who we are and the life we want to share." My throat constricted with emotion. I thought back to the heartbreak of Zara's words, to the moment I took back the wedding fund, to the awkward and humiliating lunches where I'd been sidelined. Now here was my son asking me no, inviting me to be part of the happiest day of his life. Of course I said yes, but this time I made sure to clarify something I'd be honored to help. But I want you both to lead this. If I offer ideas, you're free to embrace or reject them. It's your day. Marina nodded enthusiastically, and Elliot flashed me a grateful smile. It felt liberating not stepping in as the all-powerful organizer, but as a guide, a mentor, and most importantly, a mother. That very evening, we sat around my living room coffee table with stacks of magazines, swatches of fabric, and my old binder full of vendor contacts. Marina's eyes lit up at the possibilities. She had an affinity for natural settings and warm, earth-tone decor. "I want something intimate," she explained, tucking a stray curl behind her ear. "A day that our families and friends can really experience without feeling overwhelmed. Maybe a garden or a small outdoor venue." Elliot shrugged. "I'm fine with whatever makes you happy. As long as my mom's apple pie is part of the menu, I'm set." We all laughed because it was such an Elliot thing to say. I jotted it down in a notebook, "Include Celeste's apple pie." We spent hours discussing color palettes, sage green ivory, maybe a hint of rust orange for a soft autumn feel. Marina mentioned how her fiancé often teased her for wearing the same cozy sweaters in those shades. "Why not let the wedding reflect who we really are?" she said, smiling. "Let's skip the fancy illusions and just focus on the warmth of the moment." As I listened, a wave of gratitude washed over me. This, I realized, is what it's supposed to feel like, working together for a day that truly symbolizes love, not a brand or a trend. My mind wandered briefly to Zara's fiasco, the lost money, and that brash influencer, Freya Ray, who vanished with thousands. I wondered if Freya was still out there conning unsuspecting couples, but I pushed the thought aside. Elliot and Marina were starting fresh, and I refused to let the bitterness of the past taint their bright future. By the time they left, we had a rough outline. It wasn't set in stone, but it was filled with heart and honesty. I couldn't wait to see how it would unfold. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of excited meetings, with vendors' calls to old friends in the business and scouting for the perfect venue. One Saturday, we visited a quaint botanical garden at the edge of town. The walkways were lined with vibrant azaleas, and a small gazebo stood in the center of a lily pond. The moment Marina stepped onto the footbridge that arched over the water, her eyes lit up in amazement. She gently touched Elliot's arm. "This is it," she said, voice trembling with happiness. "It feels right," Elliot's face softened. "Do you think we can book it?" I knew from experience that this venue was in high demand, but I also knew the manager personally. I made a few calls, and before sundown, we'd arranged a date in early autumn, right when the foliage would be at its most breathtaking. Marina squealed with delight, hugging both of us. I couldn't help grinning like a fool. After everything that had happened, seeing Elliot genuinely happy with a partner who valued simplicity over spectacle felt like a miracle. Over the following days, I introduced Marina to my go-to florist, an old friend named Leona, who wore her salt and pepper hair in a short, choppy bob. Leona's shop was filled with fresh bouquets and the lingering aroma of eucalyptus. She guided Marina through seasonal flower choices, chrysanthemums, dahlias, and maybe a touch of baby's breath. Marina listened eagerly, wide-eyed, never once dismissing the advice or calling it old-fashioned. It was refreshing to watch her embrace expertise instead of belittling it. We also sampled catering options favoring home-style menus with an elevated twist, roasted vegetables, braised chicken, hearty salads with walnut toppings, and of course an apple pie. Station Elliot nearly danced with joy when he took a bite of the sample pie, exclaiming, "It's good, but nothing beats Mom's." My chest swelled with pride. This is the kind of wedding planning that matters, I thought, a family, effort grounded in love, not Instagram likes. Meanwhile, Camilla and Zara were nowhere in sight, thankfully, so sometimes gossip reached me mentioning that Zara was dating someone new, a flashy real estate broker. I wished them no ill will, but I felt a sense of relief that our lives had clearly diverged. Marina's mother, Janine, arrived in town a month before the wedding to help out. She sported a shoulder-length cut of wispy bangs and honey brown hair reminiscent of the style many mothers wore in the 80s, but updated with a modern shine. Janine was warm, kind-hearted, and excited to meet me. We bonded over stories of raising children, teasing the newly engaged couple whenever they started bickering over minor details. One evening, Janine, Marina, Elliot, and I gathered at my house for a small planning session. While Elliot and Marina discussed seating arrangements, Janine pulled me aside, glancing at the scrapbook of old wedding clippings I kept from my professional days. "You really know your stuff, Celeste," she said, her eyes shining with admiration. "How lucky they are to have you." Her words made my heart flutter. It was a stark contrast from the scathing looks and snide remarks Zara had doled out whenever I so much as suggested a florist. With Janine's endorsement and Marina's easygoing attitude, every new idea or revision felt like a collaboration rather than a power struggle. We decided on a small band instead of a DJ, chosen for their ability to play timeless hits that fit the cozy, intimate vibe. The entire event was shaping up to be the opposite of what Zara had once demanded, and it felt right like a comfortable sweater you slip into on a chilly evening. On the night before the wedding, the four of us stood in the now decorated botanical garden under rows of fairy lights we'd personally strung up. The soft hum of crickets filled the air, and the reflection of lights danced on the lily pond. Marina looked around, tears glimmering in her eyes. "This is more beautiful than anything I could have dreamed up," she whispered. Elliot pressed a gentle kiss to her temple. I stood off to the side, letting them have their moment. My gaze drifted to the canopy of stars overhead. Hugh would have loved this place, loved seeing Elliot finally choose someone who truly loved him back. For the first time in a long time, I felt a surge of peace, as though everything had come full circle. Like what you're reading. Subscribe now and never miss a heartfelt story of love redemption and the profound ties that bind us all together. The wedding day dawned crisp and golden, the early autumn sun illuminating the garden's trees in shades of crimson and gold. A light breeze rustled through the leaves, lending a gentle soundtrack to the occasion. Elliot, looking dapper in a tailored navy suit, paced near the gazebo, fiddling with his tie. I teased him gently. He'd always been the fidgety type. When nervous, nearby Marina was in a small dressing room the venue provided, putting finishing touches on her hair. She'd chosen a relaxed updo that allowed a few chestnut curls to drape around her face, reflecting her natural, understated beauty. Guests trickled in a modest crowd of family and close friends. No influencer cameras. No star-studded guest lists, just real people who had watched Elliot and Marina grow stumble and find their way back to each other, yet Slate placed thoughtful signs around the venue, requesting guests to be present rather than glued to their phones. I caught glimpses of grandparents resting on wooden benches, kids chasing each other on the lawn, and old friends gathering around the refreshment table sharing laughs. Standing at the garden entrance, I felt a rush of emotion. This day was not about me, and yet I felt so much gratitude that it wasn't just about the couple either. It was about a community of loved ones uniting to celebrate something genuine. I whispered a silent prayer of thanks for Hugh for the journey that had led me here, for the second chance at being part of a wedding that actually meant something. When the music began, a gentle violin melody, I took my seat, heart thrumming with anticipation. Marina appeared at the top of the garden path, arm linked with her mother. The white chiffon gown she wore flowed softly around her, and she carried a bouquet of autumn blooms, deep red dahlias, white roses, a few sprigs of eucalyptus. She looked like she'd stepped out of a pastoral painting, radiant with a happiness that no flashy Instagram filter could ever capture. Elliot's eyes shone with tears when he saw her, and I had to blink back my own. In that single moment, I felt every heartache, every slight, every disappointment wash away, replaced by an overwhelming sense of completeness. The ceremony itself was beautifully simple. Elliot and Marina exchanged vows they'd written themselves, sharing stories of what drew them together and why they believed in each other's dreams. Marina spoke about how Elliot's kindness disarmed her from the start, how he volunteered to help with her classroom supply drive. The very first time they hung out, Elliot, voice trembling, recounted the months he spent feeling lost and how Marina's unwavering warmth pulled him back into the light. "You reminded me of who I really am," he said, blinking back tears, "and who I always wanted to be." The efficient, a longtime friend of Marina's family, spoke of partnership, mutual respect, and the resilience needed to weather life's storms. I watched them hold hands, gazing into each other's eyes with genuine love. Part of me flashed back to that misguided engagement with Zara. No warmth, no genuine bond, just a frenzy of performance and a chase for perfection. It made me appreciate this moment even more, the raw authenticity of it. They exchanged rings, simple silver bands, with a small inscription on the inside, "Grow together." And when the officiant pronounced them married, the small crowd erupted in cheers and applause. The gentle breeze rustled the trees as if nature itself was giving them a standing ovation. Elliot and Marina kissed under a canopy of sunlight and colorful leaves, looking more like a painting of true love than any staged shoot ever could. Afterward, everyone strolled to a modest reception area we'd set up in a clearing beside the pond. Fairy lights twinkled overhead, and round wooden tables were adorned with mason jars of fresh flowers. There was no assigned seating chart printed in metallic calligraphy, just the freedom to sit wherever you felt comfortable. Families mingled, new friendships formed, and the sense of joy was palpable. I lingered near the dessert table where the famous apple pies took center stage. Marina joined me, still giddy from the adrenaline rush of the ceremony. "Celeste," she said, slipping her arm through mine. "Thank you, I mean it. None of this could have happened without you." My eyes watered at her gratitude. I thought back to the day I reclaimed the wedding fund, how angry and wounded I'd felt. It all seemed like a distant memory belonging to a different life. I just offered a bit of guidance. I told Marina humbly, "The two of you did the real work, and you had the vision for something." "True," Marina squeezed my hand. "You don't understand. I've never been the type to dream about a big wedding, but you made it feel accessible, real, and special. I'm so glad Elliot has you for a mom." Before I could respond, Elliot appeared, sporting a grin as wide as the sky. He grabbed us both in a hug, so tight I thought I'd pop. "Stop hogging my wife," he teased me playfully. The word wife lingered in the air, and Marina let out a happy sigh. I noticed his eyes drifting to the dessert table. Any chance we can cut into one of those pies early? Eyes shining with the mischief of a child. The laughter that followed was contagious. It felt as though the entire gathering was enveloped in a gentle bubble of love and light. Across the way, Marina's mother Janine was chatting enthusiastically with some of my old friends from the wedding industry. People from different corners of our lives had come together, merging into one big joyful tapestry. No drama, no snide remarks, just warmth. Later in the evening, under the twinkling fairy lights, the newlyweds shared a first dance. There was no choreographed routine, just a slow sway to a soft acoustic melody. Played by the small band, Elliot rested his forehead against Marina's, and I could see him whispering something that made her laugh. Then, to my surprise, Elliot waved me over. He beckoned me onto the dance floor for a mother-son dance. The band picked up a gentle tune, and my feet moved instinctively, guided by nostalgia and maternal love. In that moment as we danced, I felt an overwhelming sense of wholeness. This was the wedding Hugh and I had always wanted to give Elliot, one filled with sincerity, not extravagance. And though Hugh wasn't here in person, I could almost sense his presence in the wind that softly rustled the leaves. That evening ended in a flurry of hugs, toasts, and promises to keep in touch. Nobody wanted to leave. The warmth of the event was too comforting, but finally the guests trickled out. The band packed up and the garden grew quiet under the moonlight. Elliot and Marina were heading off for a short honeymoon in the mountains. No lavish, far-flung destination, just a cozy cabin by a lake, a continuation of the peaceful simplicity they both treasured. As we gathered the last of the decorations, Elliot pulled me aside. "Mom," he said, voice husky with emotion, "I can't ever repay you for what you did. Not just for the money or the planning, but for sticking by me even when I messed up." I reached up to smooth a stray lock of hair from his forehead. "There's nothing to repay. I'm your mother. Loving you and wanting the best for you is part of the deal. I just didn't realize I had to choose between that and my self-respect before." He looked down, shame flickering across his face. "I know," he whispered. "I won't ever let anyone treat you like that again. I promise Marina won't either." "She loves you, Mom." The weight of his words settled into my chest and I smiled softly. "I love her too, Elliot. I'm so proud of you." We embraced, standing amid the leftover fairy lights and half-empty mason jars of flowers, the moon casting a silvery glow over everything. In the distance, Marina and Janine were laughing, trying to gather up the last of the table linens. If ever there was a picture of harmony and healing, this was it, a far cry from the tension and hostility I once endured when Zara was around. As Elliot joined Marina, giving her a playful spin in the moonlight, I felt a pang of sadness for what might have been had things gone differently. But I also felt the serene acceptance that life had led us here through heartbreak and disappointment to a place where genuine love could flourish. For that, I was grateful beyond words. In the weeks that followed, I discovered a new sense of peace. I continued attending my pottery classes, shaping clay into bowls and mugs that were still imperfect, yet delightful in their own way. I also started volunteering at the local community center, offering free seminars on wedding planning for low-income couples who couldn't afford a professional. Sharing my years of knowledge felt like a calling, a way to ensure that no one else would fall prey to scammers like Freya Ray or get stuck chasing superficial trends. Word got around that I was helping couples plan heartfelt, budget-friendly weddings, and I was soon busier than I'd ever intended to be. But it was a joyful kind of busy. I met brides and grooms who reminded me of Elliot and Marina, grounded full of genuine love. Occasionally, I came across a bride who seemed starry-eyed about social media perfection, but even then, I tried gently to steer her toward meaningful connections rather than empty show. Meanwhile, Elliot and Marina's life blossomed. They returned from their honeymoon with stories of canoe rides and campfire nights. Marina resumed teaching, glowing with the after effects of newlywed bliss. Elliot found a new spark in his career, too. He confided that he'd taken a step back to evaluate what made him truly happy. Turns out it wasn't the prestige or money of his old job, but the sense of accomplishment he found in a more creative field. He ended up transitioning to a role in a small tech startup that valued collaboration over competition. Every now and then, we'd all have dinner at my place. Janine would stop by if she was in town, and a few friends from my pottery class might drop in too. We'd fill the kitchen with laughter and the smell of homemade soup. In one such evening, the conversation turned to weddings again. Elliot joked about how mom saved me twice, once from a scam, and once from my own stubbornness. Marina joked that Celeste is the real wedding influencer everyone should follow. The warmth in that room was almost tangible, a living proof of how far we'd come from the bitterness and heartbreak of Zara's era. Want to hear more stories that shine a light on our deepest family struggles and triumphs? Subscribe and join our community of readers who find comfort and inspiration in real-life tales. Looking back now, I see how every twist in the road brought us here. Zara's hurtful words, "Stay in your lane," once echoed in my mind like a curse. But perhaps they were a catalyst for me to draw a boundary I hadn't dared to draw before. I took back the wedding fund, yes, but I also took back my dignity and my place as a mother who refused to be written off. The heartbreak of that canceled wedding might have been the best thing that happened to Elliot, forcing him to realize he deserved a partner who valued genuine connection over flashy illusions. As for me, it taught me to cherish my own worth, to recognize that my expertise and my heart were gifts, not burdens. When I consider the wedding that did happen, the one where Elliot and Marina pledged their love beneath autumn leaves and twinkling lights, I can't help but smile. It had none of the superficial glamour Zara chased, none of the Instagram-driven frenzy, yet it held a million times more love. I wish my late husband Hugh could have seen it. I like to think he was there in spirit, his gentle presence woven into each heartfelt vow and every shared laugh. And that's the lesson I carry with me now. True love, genuine family, and meaningful celebration can't be manufactured with money or elevated by fame. They have to be nurtured through respect, compassion, and real human connection. Sometimes you have to risk being called outdated or irrelevant to stand up for those values. But when you hold on to them, what you create is far more precious than any viral post or influencer endorsed event. It's a moment in time that stands firm in memory and in the hearts of everyone present. So, yes, I took back the wedding fund, and in doing so, I reclaimed much more my relationship with Elliot and my role as a respected matriarch and my sense of self. In the end, staying in my lane didn't mean being silenced or sidelined. It meant driving forward, sure of who I was, and knowing that those who truly loved me would merge into that lane when the time was right. Thank you so much for spending time with her Fireside Stories. I hope today's narrative resonated deeply with you, reminding us all about the strength it takes to stand up for ourselves and the wisdom of knowing when to let go. Did the ending surprise you? What would you have done if placed in Celeste's shoes? Share your personal opinions and reflections in the comments below. I love hearing from each and every one of you. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because here at Her Fireside Stories, there are always more emotional journeys and heartwarming tales to come. Until next time, stay true to yourself and never underestimate your worth. Goodbye for now.